Here's something that doesn't make sense on the surface. Psychologists at UC Davis ran a study. They took two groups of people. One group wrote down things that went wrong in their week. The other group wrote down things they were grateful for, no matter how small. After 10 weeks, the grateful group reported higher energy, better sleep, and fewer visits to the doctor. But here's what nobody talks about. The grateful group didn't have better lives than the other group. Same problems, same stress, same world. The only thing different? What they chose to notice. And that one shift, that almost embarrassingly simple shift, produced measurable, physical changes in the human brain. So the real question isn't, does gratitude work? The real question is, why does it work when nothing else has changed? In 2009, a man named David Dillard walked out of a federal prison after serving 6 years. He had no phone, no savings, no one waiting for him. He sat on a bench outside the facility for 40 minutes. And then he took out a small notebook, one he had kept the entire time he was inside, and wrote 3 sentences. I can see the sky without bars. I breathed cold air this morning. My legs carried me to this bench. That notebook became a habit that started the day he entered prison. Not because someone told him to. Not because he read a self-help book. But because a prison counselor once told him, if you can find one real thing to be grateful for every day, your mind won't become a cage inside a cage. 6 years later, David left prison and built a small landscaping business. Today he employs 14 people. He still writes 3 lines every morning. He calls it his proof of life. Here's what's actually happening in your brain when you practice gratitude consistently. Your brain has a default setting. Neuroscientists call it the negativity bias. You are biologically wired to scan for threats, problems, and dangers. This kept your ancestors alive. But in modern life, it means your brain is constantly amplifying what's wrong and filtering out what's working. Gratitude essentially interrupts that filter. When you consciously identify something as good, even something small, your brain releases dopamine. Not in a fake, forced way, in a confirmed reward way. It's the same circuit that fires when you solve a problem or achieve a goal. And the more you repeat it, the more your brain starts scanning for good things automatically. You're not lying to yourself. You're not ignoring problems. You're retraining your default scan. Brain imaging studies show that people who maintain a consistent gratitude practice show increased activity in the medial prefrontal cortex, the region linked to moral reasoning, empathy, and long-term decision-making. Put simply, gratitude doesn't just make you feel better. It makes you think better. Now here's where most gratitude advice completely falls apart. People try it for 3 days. They write, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my health. And then they stop. Because it feels hollow. Because nothing changes immediately. Because it starts to feel like journaling for kindergartners. And they conclude, this doesn't work for me. But the research shows exactly why it stops working. Generic gratitude produces generic results. The brain doesn't respond strongly to vague statements. It responds to specific, concrete, sensory detail. There's a profound difference between writing, I'm grateful for my morning coffee, and writing, I'm grateful that this morning I had 6 quiet minutes before anyone needed anything from me, and the cup was warm in my hands, and for a moment the world felt manageable. One is a checkbox. The other is a memory your brain wants to return to. Specificity is where the neurological reward actually lives. Now here's the part that most people find uncomfortable. What about when things are genuinely bad? Not inconvenient, not stressful, but actually bad. Grief researchers at the University of Michigan studied bereaved parents, people who had lost children. They found something deeply counterintuitive. The parents who reported the highest long-term resilience were not the ones who avoided thinking about the loss. They were the ones who could hold both realities simultaneously, the loss and something they still valued. Not toxic positivity, not pretending, but a genuine, hard-won ability to say, this happened, and this also still exists. One mother in the study described it this way. I was angry at the sky for a year, and then one day I looked up and thought, he loved this same sky, and I still have the sky. That's not denial. That's not weakness. That is the most sophisticated emotional architecture a human being can build. Gratitude in hardship isn't about minimizing pain. It's about refusing to let pain become the only story. We are living in the most information-saturated era in human history. And information, especially the kind we consume online, is almost entirely curated toward outrage, fear, and comparison. Social media platforms are not neutral. Their algorithms are optimized for emotional activation, and the emotions that drive the most engagement are anxiety, envy, and anger. Every scroll is a tiny vote for what your brain pays attention to. And here's the brutal math. If you spend 40 minutes a day on a platform engineered to make you feel inadequate, and 2 minutes on gratitude, the platform wins. This isn't a willpower problem. It's an environment problem. The people who benefit most from gratitude practices aren't more disciplined than you. They've simply made the practice harder to skip than to do. 2 sentences in a notes app. A 30-second voice memo. A sticky note on a bathroom mirror. The format almost doesn't matter. The repetition is the whole game. So what actually happens when someone genuinely sustains this over months? Research from the Greater Good Science Center at Berkeley tracked participants over 6 months of consistent gratitude practice. The results weren't subtle. Participants reported stronger relationships, not because their relationships changed, but because they started noticing what was already there. Acts of kindness they had been filtering out. Moments of connection they had been too distracted to register. They made better financial decisions, because gratitude reduces the scarcity mindset that drives impulsive spending. They were more productive at work, not because of motivation hacks, but because they stopped burning cognitive energy on ambient resentment. And perhaps most surprisingly, they became more generous. When you genuinely feel you have enough, giving stops feeling like subtraction. It starts feeling like overflow. Here's what I want to leave you with. Gratitude is not a mood. It's not something that visits you when life cooperates. It's a practice. And like any practice, the benefit is not in the moments when it's easy. The benefit is built in the moments when it's hard. When the day was genuinely difficult. When the news was genuinely bad. When your hands feel genuinely empty. Because those are the moments that train the muscle. David Dillard didn't become resilient because prison was fine. He became resilient because he found one real thing every day and refused to let the rest of it be the whole story. You don't need a dramatic turning point. You need a notebook, or a notes app, or 30 seconds before you fall asleep. Start tonight. Not with, I'm grateful for my life. That's too big. Start with something specific, something sensory, something true. One thing that happened today that was, even in a small way, good. That's it. That's where it starts. And if you're watching this and you can't think of anything, here's one. You were curious enough to watch something that might change how you see your life. That curiosity? That's worth something.